Welcome everyone to the Yoga Collective. I am aRobi, and we'll be talking about the who, what, where, when, why, how, about the now. And yeah, it's how yoga brings us to that moment, to that point in time. One of the things with yoga is we want to become present with where we're at right now, always. And so we do that best by managing our breath. Our breath is something that normally we're compulsively doing through the autonomic nervous system. It just happens. It keeps us alive. To thrive, we need to be conscious of it. And when we thrive, we're making our best choices in every now moment. And we recognize that that's always happening. And so we do it consciously by breathing in through our nose and out through our mouth. So I'd like to bring everybody into a meditative state. Feel free to close your eyes if you feel comfortable, pulling your shoulders back, aligning your spine, bringing your chin parallel to the ground, shifting your breath, breathing in through your nose into your lower abdomen, filling into your chest, releasing effortlessly. You place your palms up on your thighs or on your knees, a comfortable, balanced position promotes receptivity. We breathe in this life experience and we let go of things that are no longer beneficial to us. We breathe in life. Letting go. We're slowing the breath. We're being conscious of how it's delivered to the body. When we shift our breath, we're able to recognize that right now moment when we can control our thoughts and our actions. I can't control my thoughts or actions yesterday, and I can't yet control them tomorrow. But right now I have power to do so. And right now is an ever-evolving state of being. Relaxing your feet, your ankles, your calves, your knees, your thighs. Deep breath in, letting go of any tension, any thoughts of outside this space. Relaxing your hands and your wrists and your forearms, your elbows, your upper arms and your shoulders. Relaxing into your hips, finding that balance point with your spine straight. We trust in the foundation that we're on. It's supporting, it's strong. Relaxing up through your chest, into your neck, finding that balance point with your head. Relaxing your jaw, your cheeks, your eyes, your temples. Breathing in a nice cool energy, prana. Breathing out what no longer serves you. Imagine for a moment the body dissolving, and all there is you, is consciousness. cell. An orb of energy. Moving effortlessly. Life is easy. There's no stress. There's no physical demands. Everything is met. Perhaps this is what we are before we're born into this world. As a speck of consciousness. Sometimes we come into this world, into situations and people who have not yet experienced yoga in their life. And they help to shape our lives. And when we're shaping our lives in an environment that could use yoga, sometimes we suffer. Yoga is something that allows us to attach into the body, to connect to our body in this experience in the physical. It should seem effortless. There's no fear. There isn't struggle. We lose our compulsive nature when we become aware of cause and effect and how our life is shaped by our thoughts and our actions. Rubbing your fingers together a little bit and opening your eyes when you feel comfortable. Coming back into this space. So we're going to start off with the who. And the who is you. The who is everyone as an individual in this life experience that we're all in. We're all in this together. It's for everyone who wants health and wellness and kind of a more predictable life. You know, if we're stretching and we're working our bodies and we're working our minds in a way that we move away from compulsive action, there's little regret. We're exploring life more purposefully. It's you being the change that you want to see in the world. Because we can lead by example, but we can't lead by expectations. So whenever we're presenting who we are, who we intend to project into the world, we're building the idea of what others are going to assume into theirs. When you can exude happiness and joy and peace within yourself, you're building your environment into something with more peace and joy and happiness in your experience. The what about yoga is a little bit more involved. It's focusing on our engineering. The engineering of our body, the engineering of our mind, the engineering of our thoughts and actions and the way that we communicate with the world. You know, for a long time, our external world has been it's been engineered in a way that promotes ease. You know, the first time in history, we have more affluency than kings. You know, any kind of food that you want, you can just push a couple buttons on a magic little device and it shows up to your door in 20 or 30 minutes. most kings would have been astonished by that. They would demand that technology. But now it's in everybody's hands. It probably would have made a king very happy to be able to have that, so much power right in their fingertips. But we look around, and depression and anxiety and suicides are at all-time highs. And it's because we're becoming aware, but without a consciousness of how to use that awareness in a positive way. There's a couple of props that I brought today. One of them is the news. And that's kind of representation of the news that we're bringing in every night. It's all the negatives. It's the focus on things that aren't going right. But there's so much in the world that's happening that's beautiful. Like right now. We have the Yoga Collective here in Yakima that I don't know of anywhere else in the world that offers this kind of opportunity. And it's just through the free will, voluntary efforts of the teachers and everybody who's participating. It's voluntarism. It's freedom. It's voluntary participation with others. Everything is available to us. Any kind of food, any kind of entertainment, health maintenance. There's 20 different kinds of health maintenance you can choose, from diets to gym memberships to something online subscriptions, whatever. But we haven't focused on our inner engineering because we haven't found peace. And when we find peace within ourselves, everything else around us just flourishes. And so that's one thing that yoga helps us to accomplish. So yoga, or yoka, Y-O-K-E, is like the yoke. A yoke is a much more comfortable way for us to connect to our body in this experience. Because this body is an accumulation of our environment, both our body and our mind. We've taken in ideas, and we've taken in food, and we've formulated thoughts, and we've formulated a body. This is much bigger than what my mom gave me. It's, little. This is our biological temple, our vessel, the seat of the soul. We use this body in a way that we find growth and potential of helping others and participating in this environment. But when it's not working for us, sometimes it's a painful experience. People are suffering from things that happen. Whereas with yoga, we learn to shift our perspective. And a quick exercise for shifting perspective. If I could get everybody to just point your fingers up in the air and start making, like you're looking up at the ceiling, clockwise motion. And then we go I'm sorry, I messed that up. Can we start off and look down here though? And we're going in a clockwise motion. Okay? And then we're without disturbing that motion, we're bringing it all the way up. Right? And when we get to the top side, we recognize that we're no longer going in a clockwise motion. Right? And was that an error that we made? Or is it a perspective that we hold? And so somebody coming in here said, well, you're going counterclockwise, of course. And you're like, no, I'm going clockwise because I'm looking at it from a different way. And so when we recognize the opportunities of perspective, we can recognize that there might be another way that we just didn't even know that we didn't know until we know it, That's kind of a tongue twister. But there's things that we just don't even know that we don't know until we become aware of it. And it becomes into our awareness, and then we can either take it as a truth or something that we're just not quite sure about. But there's some things in our life that when somebody says something, you just know that that makes sense. It rings true with your experience or other things that you've heard in different ways. And so that's where we use our discernment. And we use our discernment to focusing on our breath, becoming aware of that right now, comparing it to our banks of knowledge and experience. Pranayama is something that helps us to recognize this experience as an accumulation rather than a cell. We're not confined to this. Prana is the breath in, is life force. Without it, we don't live. So, another little exercise. You can just take a nice deep breath in, holding for a moment at the top, letting go effortlessly, holding for a moment at the bottom of the breath, breathing in through the nose, filling in the chest, holding for a moment, letting go, pausing for a moment. As we breathe in, we're breathing in that life experience, any life experience. The gentle pause at the top helps us to recognize that this experience is really, really great. Because sometimes if we hold on to something for too long, it can become toxic, and so we have to let it go. And so we let it go effortlessly because we trust in the next life experience. It's for our growth. It's for us to grow and learn and keep experiencing that right now moment the best we know how. When we recognize the toxicity of what we've been experiencing, we let it go effortlessly. And when we pause at the bottom, we build that appreciation of the next life experience. Nice deep breath in, holding. Now hold on to that breath just as long as you can. Whenever you feel you need to exhale and take the next breath, it's fine. It's okay. But we realize that something that gives us life isn't meant to be held on to for too long. It's the constant flow of you through the universe. We come into experiences and we go out of experiences. And that is something the asanas teach us. Is we're going into an experience, we're focusing, we're controlling everything that we can control. We may be balancing on one leg, and maintaining our hips in a certain orientation, stretching our arms, pulling our fingers apart. Your eyes are working their way to the edges of their boundaries. You're pushing those boundaries. You're balancing. Everything about you, you're controlling during that asana, during that pose. And when it starts to get difficult, controlling what we can control, we breathe and we focus on the breath. And it helps us to turn something uncomfortable into something comfortable. Something that we can manage. We can push past pain. We can find gain and growth. Open your eyes when you feel comfortable. So the where of yoga is anywhere you are. It's not just our class on Tuesday or Thursday at the Yoga Collective or hot yoga on Fridays. It's how we can bring yoga into our day-to-day life in everything that we do. Whether we're brushing our teeth at the bathroom sink and in goddess pose and working your way back and forth, changing hands, focusing on your breath every time somebody comes into your experience that is trying to push buttons. We don't want to We don't want to let our environment, the environmental stimulus, be the guide of how we're going to react to it. So when we focus on our breath, we focus on what we can control. One of the little mantras I have is helping me maintain my peace around people who aren't peaceful, is that it's not my circus. Those aren't my clowns that I have to deal with right now. And I don't want to give my energy as admission to their circus, right? And so if I give my energy and I keep on bringing these same people into my life, I'm enabling them and I'm disempowering myself because I'm not maintaining healthy boundaries. And boundaries are just something that we should watch out for, that, they should be flexible. We want people to come in and out of our lives. But we can also recognize that if a certain person is always causing conflict, that it's not your problem. You're leading by example. You're coming to be a yoga teacher. You're helping to push these ideas into other people's lives, not push, offer them so they can either accept it or reject it. But we're at least creating that awareness. And with awareness, we can shift our actions and our thoughts. Most everybody has a yoga mat. And so it's a great example of how much space it actually takes to do yoga. And you don't even need a mat. We can do it up against walls, or we can using our body weight, leveraging, minimizing contact points. We can really have a great workout just by ourselves. This is such a fantastic biological supercomputer. It can clone itself when we combine with the male and female. It can heal itself. I've healed from so much trauma. I've been hit by vehicles and broken bones, and everything is fine still. I'm almost 50 years old, and I'm in the best shape of my life. I enjoy my life every day now. Yoga has really helped that happen. Yoga is always done locally. Sometimes we come together as a community to share methods and pathways of how we experience yoga. And that's where Yoga Collective is a really, really awesome deal, because a person can come to a Thursday class. They come to a Thursday class at 10 o'clock, and they're going to have a different experience every time. Because I think we're close to 40 instructors now offering classes. And so we have that ability of being able to diversify the experience, and everybody comes from a different walk of life. And so that's a beautiful thing. That diversity is how nature thrives, and it's how humanity thrives too. If everybody was just like me, it'd be a boring place. I would know what you're going to say, I'd know what you're going to do, and it would be horrible. So, the when of yoga is always right now. And that's what the asanas help to teach us, because sometimes they're very difficult. And just trying to maintain a perfectly still and motionless focus for even a matter of seconds in some of the poses is difficult. But it really brings us to that right now moment. And when you think that you've got to put your foot down, or you think that you've got to relax, you breathe and you push a little bit farther, and you realize, I thought that I could only go this far. But then when I managed my breath and I managed myself in this right now moment, I went this far. And that's always happening with us. We're always growing, we're always learning. And it's through community. I didn't learn everything by just sitting in meditation. Sometimes I sit in meditation in the forest and I just watch. I have a place in East Sela that's about the closest thing to nature as you can get without traveling 20 or 30 miles outside of town. But it's a homestead based on permaculture principles. I've got goats and chickens, and I do terracing and hugelkultur and mulching and growing food, building a food forest where only desert was producing sagebrush and some undesirable plants that, really stickers and stuff. But by my intention, I'm shaping my environment. And that's what I'm building out in Hawks Haven, is a landscape that transforms into a symbiotic relationship. And I teach yoga to help the individual transform into a symbiotic relationship with their experience. You know, we're not struggling with ourself with yoga. When we can get into that right now moment, there isn't these contradictions of thoughts. If we have a thought that comes in, we can ask ourselves, because we're thinking right now, we're not compulsive about it. Is that towards my growth? And then we think, and we're able to analyze everything that's coming in. Now is a use it or lose it, kind of like sick leave. You know, if you've gone for 2 years without getting sick at all at work, maybe HR is going to come up to you and say, hey, you've got some sick leave piled up. You need to use this or lose it. And that's kind of another indication of our society that it's normal to be sick. But it's not natural for us to be ill. Rarely ever do the animals in nature need a veterinarian. And because of predators, they may not live as long as we live. But thankfully in our society, it's actually pretty peaceful. Most everybody we come across, I'm not afraid that anybody's trying to attack. You know, we shouldn't be worried about each other because we're all just reflections from that same source. You know, the Namaste. We're all recognizing that oneness of each other. Do unto others as you want others to do unto you, because it does affect us. So that now moment, if you can only control one thing in your mind, what thoughts you're holding, and if you can only control one body, which is yours, how do you wish to do it? And so when we become aware of that right now moment, we're always going to be focusing on the perspective that allows the growth. Some things happen to us and we feel like the world is pushing on us. But when we can recognize the opportunity for growth, and everything has an opportunity for growth no matter how difficult it was. Sometimes it teaches courage. Sometimes it teaches the strength to step away from toxicity. Sometimes it just teaches us to be aware of what can I gain from this. And then it happens for us instead of to us. Yoga is the original science of how this all happens. It helps us to become aware of that right now moment. That's where you have power. There's books written about it. Eckhart Tolle, he's got a couple of books, I think, written on the power of now. All the sages, all of the philosophers, that's what they've brought to us, is this awareness of when we have power to control our life and to recognize the cause and effects that have built us to where we're at right now. You know, I used to be married, and that was a choice to get married because two people thought that would be the best thing to happen, right? And then there was a time that the pathway started to separate. And so two people decided that we should go on our own pathways. And it happened effortlessly because we let go of what wasn't working anymore and we moved into what was. After my divorce, I started teaching here at the Yoga Collective. And I've been here for about 1.5 years, and it's really been a great opportunity. It's opened me to a community of like-minded people, opportunities just recently teaching through Pacific Northwest University, through the Yakima Police Department. Definitely a group of professionals that need meditation in their life. You know, they deal with a lot of difficult things. The why of yoga: wellness and focus and balance, growth and strength and confidence, conscious thought and action. I know I'm speaking kind of fast, but this will be available on the YouTube channel if you want to review anything. It brings ease, stress. I'd like to go into that part real quick. Into the medical benefits of yoga. So in 2017, these are the stats that I found. The top 8 ways that Americans died and recycled their bodies. The first one was heart disease, taking over 647,000 people a year. Things that people have in common that have heart disease is they have depression or anxiety. Sometimes they have anger issues, they have high cholesterol and excess weight. And stress is the mind and in digestion and in the body. Stress is opposite of ease. And so when we have stress in our life, we're promoting dis-ease of our energy body, which the direction of the dis-ease of our energy body is going to manifest physically into disease. Number 2 is chronic lower respiratory disease, taking over 160,000 people a year, such as like bronchitis, asthma, emphysema. If you'd notice, there's a lot of people that they breathe upper diaphragm only. That's where anxiety, that's where depression, that's where stress is found. Hypertension, it's from these short little breaths. It creates an acidic body with the lack of oxygen that we're not taking in by breathing properly, breathing into our belly. A child, if we watch a child, they're coming into this experience knowing how to breathe. They learn from their environment to shift their breath because they don't want their belly to get big. I remember that when I was like 4 years old. I was like, why is everybody else not breathing with their bellies? And so I started breathing more in a chest. And it lasted for a long time because that was the imprint of my ego that I allowed to happen. Was that's the way that's acceptable. And that's the way that works in this environment. And so I shifted who I was and what I did to match my environment, which wasn't healthy. And it took me a long time to find that health again. And yoga is what has helped that happen. Number 3 is stroke and cerebrovascular diseases, taking 146,000 people a year. Again, stress, inactivity. They're not exercising their lymphatic system. You know, our lymph nodes are like toxicity pumps that help our body to relieve the toxins that we're taking in with foods and atmosphere. Alzheimer's is based on a sedentary lifestyle. An Alzheimer's patient or a person who suffers it is almost like a CD that's stuck on replay. They wake up in the morning, they're doing the same things over and over and over again. And so they're lacking life experience and they're not growing anymore. Sometimes they're even starting to form themselves to the couches that they sit in. You know, their arms or their shoulders are bent way over. They can't even stand up anymore. It's because they're allowing an environment that isn't healthy to shape them. It's great that we have teachers that go into some of the retirement homes doing chair yoga. That's another great opportunity to go in and participate with the elders of our community. Alzheimer's is also a result of toxicity buildup. Diabetes, taking over 84,000 people a year. We're basing that on diet, sedentary behavior, stresses of the body and mind. Genetics has something to do with that as well, because we're bringing children into an environment that maybe the same habits have caused diabetes in the parents and grandparents. And if we do the same things, we're getting the same results. So, but with yoga, we become aware that I started asking myself why on everything I was doing. Every time I could be aware of why am I doing it this way. And things started making sense because I started shifting into something that made a little more sense. Everything else had been imprinted on me. Been how I learned from a parent or how I learned from a mentor of some kind. And maybe they weren't expressing life in a most efficient way just because that's what they knew. It was working for them to a point, but sometimes there's better. Sometimes there's different ways of living life that promotes I call it simplicity, because it's simple because it's only right now that I have to worry about who I am. But I've been in this right now moment for some time that I can look back, and I'm not facing resentments or regrets. I'm recognizing the things that have happened as lessons. I look back on my life, and I'm thankful for everything, because it's built me to who I am right now. And I'm happy, I'm content with my life, and I wouldn't change it with anybody. Number 7 is accidental poisoning, taking about 65,000 people a year. And this is including prescription drug overdose. And so prescription drug overdose could vastly be eliminated if maybe the first 6 ailments weren't present. And depression was a thing of the past. We're teaching kids meditation. And I have these shirts made up. And, because it seems like I've heard numbers that 70% of our population is medicated on either pharmaceuticals, doctor recommended, or on the back streets, just self-medicating. And it might be alcohol, or it might be cigarettes, or cannabis, or whatever it is that we're using as an aid to keep our peace. We're still not building that within when we use these crutches. Sometimes the crutches are dangerous. I know people who have chosen very hard drugs to try to deal with life. And they take too much one day and they die. And it's kind of a selfish thing, in my opinion, because you're leaving all these people behind that really care about you when you check out too early. And it's like leaving the work party a little bit sooner than everybody else. There's things that we are here to do. Things that we're here to teach each other and to have these experiences. And for too long we've been pushed in these ways of separation. But when we create that unity, when we create that yoga, union with each other, it's an extension of self. If I hold this like this is me, and that's you, everybody else, I'm not going to cut off my own finger because it would hurt, right? When I extend my awareness to you as being part of me, I wouldn't want to cut your finger off either because it's going to hurt. And it's just not a good way to be with each other. And you're not going to like me, and you're not going to invite me to any of your parties because he's a pretty rude guy. The 8th one is pneumonia and influenza. Both of those stem from not breathing properly to help maintain an alkaline body and a healthy immune system. I haven't had the flu in nearly a decade. I haven't had any ailments because with yoga we promote a healthy system capable of removing the toxins and building a healthy immunity to our environment. The original yogis, before we had yoga studios, before we had teacher certifications and trainings, they would go to the forest. They would go to their gurus who went to the forest. And they learned from nature. And we learn a lot of our yoga poses are after animals or after nature. And they're ways of expressing ourselves and learning how nature can teach us all these lessons. So this brings us to the how. How do we bring these principles of yoga into our life? It's by practice. And every time we can practice, we're bringing this into our normal, everyday, our go-to. When stress happens, somebody cuts you off in traffic, instead of going for the horn, go for the breath. I mean, if they need to be aware that you're there, obviously use your safety equipment too. But we go to the breath, and we look at the perspective, and you're like, I hope they become a better driver because they might hurt somebody or themselves. And we realize that they may be going like, oh shit, I just I just cut that person off. They didn't mean to. But if we get angry about it, who does that help? It just takes away our bliss. And it builds cortisol. Anger, stress builds cortisol in our body, which affects our cholesterol. And I mean, our bodies are like these like chemical factories. And with the right thoughts and the right actions, we're building the right chemicals. Serotonin, and dopamine, and the great things that adrenaline that the body produces when we're using it in the way that it's intended by nature for us to use. These are things that can put you in states of samadhi. It's bliss. You can just sit here and just with a thought of gratitude and balance. Tears can be flowing from your eyes. Just being so grateful for this experience, because I had an experience that I almost checked out of this place, and now every morning when I wake up, I open my eyes. I'm like, right on. What do I get to do today? Because it's not a gift that's given to everybody. It's a present. Because it's happening right now. It's right, and it's always happening. But not everybody gets that life experience every day. So just you being here right now is a beautiful thing. And it's something that we should be grateful for. We're doing what we want to do. I know there's probably other things you have to do too, but this is something that you thought was the best thing for you to do right now, and you're able to do it. We live in that freedom. We have that space to be able to do that. So, focusing on gratitude, it's that attitude of gratitude that brings us into a happiness and a kind of a zest for life. So there's a lot of things that we can address in the world or with ourselves, and I call those the fruits. So imagine yourself as a tree, and the tree starts growing a bitter fruit. Do you blame the fruit that came from the tree, or do we change the root system that builds a different tree to provide different fruit? Some things are best composted. If it's a bitter tree and we don't like it and it stinks and everything else, we can compost that. We can chop down that tree, we can pull it out of the ground, and we can put it in our past. We can foster the things that we want to have in our life by being aware of what we want to build. A lot of people do that with a vision board or affirmations. Just a sheet of notes, of brainstorming of what you want to build in your life helps us to become aware of what we're trying to build right now. How yoga does this is it promotes that receptivity to growth. It helps us to realize that there are things that we don't know how to do yet, or we don't have the strength to do yet. There's poses and postures that I've seen people do on YouTube or at events that I'm like, oh my gosh, that is amazing. I can't believe they've leveraged their bodies in ways that they're displaying phenomenal strength and endurance. I've seen where just amazing poses, and they're holding them for like a minute or 2 minutes or 3 minutes. Iron, like a statue. And I can't do that yet. Some of those poses are they're difficult, and it helps me to recognize how much I still have to grow. In my 30s, I was running a successful business, and I was doing all the things that I thought was normal and productive in life, and then I realized that it wasn't really making me happy, because it wasn't focused on the things that were really important. And the things that are really important are internal happiness, making my happiness come from within me. I had several relationships in my life because I was looking for my happiness outside of myself. And nobody's going to ever fill that void for you if you're not taking care of it yourself. And that's what yoga helps us to do. It helps us to put us in control of what we can control. When we're aware of it, we can shape our lives however we want. 10 years ago, you wouldn't have recognized me. You wouldn't want to hear a word I had to say. I was drinking a lot. I was doing a lot of things that everybody else is doing, and that isn't working for them. They're suffering from disease. They're just suffering their health and their mental well-being. And finally, the now is that always happening, ever-evolving moment. We look at it from the physical way of growth, and we are limited beings. We're coming into this experience, and we're going to go back out of this experience. And unless we've done something super fantastic that goes into the books, we become dirt. And we lose our power of creating in this environment when we hand back this body. We borrowed this body from the planet, and one day we're going to give it back. But a lot of people think that it's somebody else's job. That somebody else is going to die. I'm not going to die anytime soon. But sometimes we don't know. I mean, I've lost a lot of friends before their 30s and 40s even. They just stopped existing. Here in this plane, a lot harder to see now. So some of the benefits of meditation. I look at yoga that we're teaching as an introduction as 3 primary tenets: the asanas, the meditation, and pranayama. Focusing on the breath helps us to find that meditative mind. Single point of focus. You're feeling the breath. You're bringing your physical senses into your life experience, and you're recognizing things right now. That single point of focus helps us to calm the mind. So when we're calming the mind, we're becoming aware of the distractions. Sunday evenings, I teach the mindfulness meditation here quite often. And I don't play any music because there are distractions available. We have a music store next door, and we have a nail salon on the other side, and we have traffic going by. And we use those distractions to help us practice returning to our center point, where we want to be. And if something happening 20 feet or 50 feet away is going to take away your focus, that proves that we need to practice. Because it's not something that's affecting you, but we're letting it affect. If we don't breathe it in, experience it, I thank it. Before I'd get mad, I'm like, they know I'm trying to meditate. I am trying to meditate. Give me some peace and quiet here, will you? But we don't always find that. And so when we recognize that these distractions, when they come into our experience, we thank it. We're like, all right, thank you. But now I'm letting it go with the breath, and I'm focusing on what I want to focus on. And I want to focus on right now. I want to focus on my breath. And I want to maintain that calmness. I recently went on a ride-along with the Yakima City Police. And we got into an altercation with a guy that didn't want to be arrested. And other people joined in, and there's only 2 of the officers, and so I helped him out. And I just helped, position the guy in a way that the other officer was able to come and help cuff him. And when we got back out to the car, the officer was, really excited about this experience. And I've been in, I was active duty military for 9 years, and I got a bit of a law enforcement background too. So it didn't really excite me too much, and I was able to keep my breath, focused, and so I was able to demonstrate to him. I'm like, okay, well, this is the perfect opportunity to use meditation. And so with 3 breaths, he went from a really excited state to, wow, that really works. That just shifted my whole experience of how I'm digesting this information now. And that was the first fight he'd ever been in. And luckily it didn't get elevated to where any too much force was required. Sometimes we see instances of where police are using too much force, and that's one of the reasons that Pacific Northwest University is working towards helping police officers learn meditation, helping them recognize these tools as beneficial to them. A lot of them, they spend 20 years doing a job that most people don't want to do. You're dealing with people at their worst a lot of the time, and they suffer the hypertension, they suffer depression, anxiety, they're self-medicating, and that can be kind of a recipe for disaster for themselves and for the community that they support or they serve. Meditation helps to strengthen our awareness and our will. When a distraction comes in and it takes your focus, your will is being strengthened by you ignoring that and returning to where you want to be. And our will is one of our most powerful things because it determines the direction of our actions. And I feel that it's so important that I actually tattooed it across my knuckles. Free will. My middle name is Will. William. And I'm the freest guy that I know. And working in construction and with my hands and in active jobs, it was my hands that basically set me free. My 40th birthday, I decided to dedicate myself to the things I felt were most important, and it was no longer my plumbing business. And so I closed that, and I've been just trusting in the universe now, trusting in that flow, and it's working. And I've been over 5 years now retired from busyness, and now I just keep myself as busy as I want to be. So when I first started learning to meditate, I would watch some videos on YouTube. I would find the one with the highest reviews, and I would try to incorporate that into a daily routine. And when I first started out, I would be sitting, and I'm like, okay, that didn't feel very good, so I would position myself on the ground, and that felt better, and I could relax, and it'd get me into the meditation. And for a 30-minute meditation, it usually would last 3 or 4 hours, because then I'd wake up and I was like, okay, it's time to try that again next time when I'm not so tired. And that would happen for some time. And that's when I recognized that practice is helping us to be perfect. And so I kept on trying it. And then the more often I would sit, I would be more comfortable, because I was pushing past these boundaries that I had held before. I was strengthening myself and strengthening my will to do what I felt was going to be in my growth. And then I was talking with a happy monk. That's the best person to learn from, to learn happiness, right? Is a happy person. And he's the happiest guy you come across. I mean, just always expressing just a real cheerful way of being. He said, if you try to teach people meditation, and you do it in 20 or 30 minutes, people fall asleep. I said, I've been there. He said, and people say they don't have time. It's hard to find 20 minutes or 30 minutes of quiet time and a place that they can meditate. He said, so I brought it down to the simplest meditation that I know of. And if you find a simpler one, please tell me, because this is the simplest that I have found. And it's a 1-second meditation. And I'm like, how are you going to meditate in 1 second? Because really, 1 second, what's that going to do for you? He says, keep in mind that 1 second is always happening. And so every time that you start to feel yourself being pulled in a direction, remember 1 second meditation. And so I teach my friends that I'm teaching about meditation and mindfulness. That if you don't want to do tattoos, that's okay. But at least take like a Sharpie and write breathe right here on your hand. And every time you're taken off of that calm, centered, peaceful way of feeling, remember to breathe. Shift your breath. As you're shifting your breath, shift your posture. Shift your awareness of your thoughts. Shift your awareness of your actions, your body. Everything that you can control right now is capable of being done in that 1 second meditation. The more times that we revert to that 1 second meditation as our go-to, it becomes a common response for our body. Instead of, we get that little bit of a shock that knocks us off our center, we breathe. What can I control about the situation right now? I can control myself. I can control my perspective. I can help to shift my thoughts to the ways that this is helping me grow. Or maybe it's the way that humor is being brought to me. Sometimes we have to laugh at ourselves, because sometimes we just don't know what we don't know until we know it. And that's okay, because with awareness, we become aware of all these opportunities. We were talking a little bit ago about how our environment can shape us if we're not careful about where we're getting our information. If somebody comes up and they're mad all the time, and they're trying to tell you how to be happy, we should probably recognize that they're not the best teacher for that. But if our environment that isn't working toward the benefit of humanity is shaping us through a television and programming and a culture that we're growing up in, we just have to ask ourselves, is this the best way to do it? So like I said, I started asking why on everything. My food. I'm like, okay, what are the options? I'm like, I can get it from the store, and I can get it from this store or this store or this store. Or I can get it a little bit closer to the source of like a farmer's market, or I can go directly to somebody who's growing it, and I can achieve my nutrition that way. Or I can gather it at the source. And so like the source that the environment that I moved into is a great space in which I can create a source or a resource that I'm doing it most naturally. And so I've been shaping and creating soil and conditions that food can grow. And so I recognize an option that for me, it works well because I don't spend hardly any money on food anymore. I go outside and I'm more like an animal. I go through, I'm like, oh, okay, there's some mustard and there's some kale and there's things that I'm able to pull from the ground, and the life energy that's in that food is something that I found very beneficial for me. I enjoy it. I don't need nearly as much of it anymore as some of the foods that are available from like the restaurants or something like that. They bring you a plate this big. Now a plate this big lasts me 3 meals or 4 meals. So our environment is shaping our subconscious if we allow these imprints to happen on a regular basis. And that moves us into compulsive action. That's like our ego responses. That's how we respond to things without thinking of it. We know a certain way of being, and we respond in the same way that maybe our dad did or our mom did, and we see our parents or our mentors in our actions. For me, I learned how to handle anger from my dad. He wasn't good at it. And so I was kind of explosive in my younger days. Now I've learned how to manage it, and a person can't really make me mad anymore. I mean, short of a physical assault, I'm just going to laugh it off. And that's power, because if we give our environment power over us, that's like the worst kind of slavery. That's somebody doesn't even have to touch us. They don't have to confine us to one little box. But we're keeping ourselves in a box of limitation by letting our environment stimulus affect how we are. Yoga helps us to move into that conscious action because we're conscious of that right now moment. And that right now moment, ever evolving. But sometimes we get wrapped up in the stimulus from our environment, and so then we lose our breath. We start to breathe upper diaphragm, more in that autonomic nervous system mode. Sometimes you get into a difficult posture, and you realize, oh, this is really difficult, and then you realize, oh, I'm not breathing. And then you start to breathe, and it becomes easier. And it's not that because the physical action became easier, you're holding it longer than you were. It's that we're consciously bringing the body, the oxygen, the energy that it needs to fuel the muscles to accomplish that task. Time for everyone is time is using us like a toy. When the battery runs out, when our energy is depleted, that's when we go back. And for a lot of people on this planet, or at least in the United States, it's about 85 years old. You know, it's a good average when people are, you know, they've used up their energy of their body and they're ready to go. But I've also seen people into their like over 100 years old. And they've led a different life than the people who are checking out at 85, and they're still full of vitality. They're still practicing yoga. They're still dancing. They're still enjoying their life. They're engaging. They're going on vacations. They're exploring. They're seeing new things. And that just happens because of the choices that they've made throughout their life. Stress is something that is so important that I keep on bringing this in because it's the dis-ease that promotes the separation. It's struggle. It makes it to where life is harder than it needs to be for us. And stress is easy to step away from because we're learning to manage our mind and manage our body in a way that stress isn't a problem anymore. It's something that other people are experiencing. It's sometimes our environment is trying to push on us with timelines. What time is it? I don't know what time it is. It's almost that time, but it's always there's always something that has to be done. And we're kind of living our lives to a schedule and a clock. But nature doesn't do that. Nature, like my dogs, when they're hungry they eat, and when they're tired they go to sleep, and when it's cold they find a sunny spot, and when it's hot they find a shady spot, and when they're not tired anymore they wake up. And I've learned a lot from them, and so I kind of do the same thing. I don't have a normal sleeping schedule. I go to sleep when I'm tired and I wake up when I'm not. Certain things on the calendar that I know I need to be awake for. You know, coming into this, I woke up 2 hours ago. So. A lot of times people are teaching about stress management. But stress isn't something that we should try to manage because we should only put it, it's like what we think about, we bring about. And so if we're thinking about stress and we're thinking about these problems that cause these issues in our life, we're giving our energy to that. So what I promote is simplicity management, because we want to give our energy to things that we want in our life. And that's going to be all of the decisions that we make through our lives to create the best life for ourselves. And that's the beautiful thing, is everybody's going to have different choices. It's like ingredients in a soup. Right? If everybody had different ingredients, we all have the same ingredients available, but each soup's going to be a little bit different. You know, there's just going to be more of this experience that somebody wants and a little bit less of this one. They're going to be added at different times. They're going to be experienced in different parts of our life. So we should not manage the things that we don't desire, because what we think about, we bring about. Failure to recognize our opportunities for growth promotes frustration. And frustration is the root of anger. And frustration is just not knowing how to handle something. And so when we come across an obstacle in our life and we don't know how to handle this, something keeps happening that we don't like. And if we don't know how to handle it, it's going to build stress. It's going to build frustration. And when we have that frustration and stress long enough, we're going to snap on people. Maybe somebody says something, like, we're going to maybe react in a way that we don't find favorable. And so with yoga, we're learning to consciously act versus reacting. And once you've been consciously acting in a way that you find favorable for your experience, we're working to shape our subconscious, or our ego, to work for us. You know, people talk about an ego death, and it's an idea of who you think you are. And if we think that we're limited to one idea, one possibility, we're going to suffer, because look at the caterpillar turns into a butterfly. And sometimes there's several transformations that happens before it becomes its final expression. And so if we pay attention to the caterpillar and we don't expect it to change, we would never see the beauty of the butterfly. And that's where individually we shift, we blossom. The lotus represents the blossoming from something less than desirable. It grows from the muck. It grows from the mud that sometimes is stinky and sticky, and it isn't something that maybe you want to have into your life, but it creates a beautiful flower from something that's less than desirable. It's like alchemy. Alchemy, not necessarily turning lead into gold, but taking something less than desirable and turning it into something desirable. There was times in my life that I didn't like my life much. I wasn't happy with myself. I wasn't happy with my some of the relationships or my job, and so I recognized I had to change. And you know, one of those big wake-ups was getting out of the military, recognizing that I wasn't supporting what I thought I was supporting. Yoga, it works to create comfort in using the mind and the body. It's a less painful way than other tethers. Meditative practices can get us through a lot of different things. It can help us transcend pain. It can help us transcend illness. Wim Hof, he is a great example of taking control of the autonomic nervous system to include the immune system. If you look him up, he's in medical journals, and the Iceman, and using breath management and the conscious awareness and thoughts and affirmations, he was able to be injected with virus. Small virus, but one that elevates temperature and causes nausea and typical responses like flu. But he was able to transcend that and not let that happen to his body because of what he was doing consciously with his. So I saw this the other day. It was a 10 things in our life that help us to achieve Zen. And Zen is that peaceful place, that complete awareness of who we are, how we are, and bringing in a consciously created experience. So one of the first things, a lot of this is about letting go. And that's one thing with the breath that teaches us. When we audibly exhale, we're hearing the breath leave with our physical senses. We're feeling it leave, and we know that it's something that's no longer serving us. And so a lot of these items here are things that no longer serve us. Things that we've picked up from our environment, things that we are just, it's like a malware. You know, we have like this supercomputer, and if we have the wrong input, it creates a malware on our operating system. And yoga is like the antivirus. It goes in and we say, oh, with this awareness, we're like, oh, this file, emotion, way of being, isn't the way I want it. It's been compromised. I want to shape it to how I want that to be my expression to others. And so with that awareness, we do that. In Ten to Zen, it says, let go of comparing. When we let go of comparing, we're recognizing the authenticity in each person. Because Michelle's better at doing certain things than I am. But I may know how to do a few things that maybe Brad doesn't. And Brad knows how to do things that I don't. And everybody has their skills. And so if I'm trying to compare my skills with somebody else, I may not be as skilled as you in your area of expertise. It doesn't make me less of a person. It makes us different people. Because each person has a limited ability, a limited amount of energy to accomplish certain things. And so we're going to focus our energy on the things that we feel are most important. And so a mantra that I like for that is, I am no better or worse than anyone else. And it would be a boring life if everyone was just like me. And that helps us to avoid a superiority or an inferiority. It helps us to create just an awareness that we are all equal. We're equally capable of doing the things that we want to do in our life. And you put your energy wherever you want it to be. Item number 2 is let go of competing. There's a piece of the pie for everyone. And so recognizing that this isn't a competition. Life is a pathway. It's a journey. And we're all at different steps along that journey, because we don't want it to be like the free day at Disneyland where you spend 4 hours trying to get on each feature. Everybody's doing their own thing at their own times, which is a good thing. Just do your best. We share who gets to win by when we engage with other people. Say Laura's really good at racquetball, and if I played racquetball with her, she's going to be the winner. But we share the abilities. We share this experience. It's not always about me. It's not always about one person. It's about sometimes yielding. In martial arts, we learn that sometimes yielding is more favorable than trying to engage. If somebody goes to punch you on the shoulder or punch at you, it's easier if you just move out of the way. They glance away. Their energy is gone. It doesn't affect you. If we try to absorb that energy, it creates conflict. We let go of judgments. We don't know what other people have gone through and what they've been through in their life. We've all had a unique experience. When we get to talk with each other, when we get into a way that we trust each other, we realize that sometimes there's shared experiences that we've all gone through, but everybody has had a unique life. And that's it's another beautiful thing. And whatever we think somebody else is supposed to be, that's not their job. It's not their job to be who you think they should be. because it's not your job to be who they think you should be. We should give that respect to each other, always. We don't want to push our will on other people by force. If we can present a good idea, it'll be just naturally assimilated. You know, if I say, hey, did you know that holding your water in one of these is really handy, and I can prove it because I can turn it upside down and it's mobile and it doesn't leach any plastics into it or minimally, and I found this to be a really great way. I'm not going to force anybody else to do that, because your experience, you may say, I use glass. I think it's better than in glass is a great alternative. But that's where everybody has their benefit. We need to let go of anger. We talked about this for a moment. The root being frustration, not knowing. We counteract that by creating awareness of what we can control and when we can control it. We let go of regrets, because we can't change the past. We can look back on the past and we can learn lessons that we were presented. But to hold regret is saying that it happened to you, or you weren't happy about who you were. And that's again about dropping those judgments. We have to drop the judgments of ourselves about not being who we thought we should have been in the past. There's times that, drinking too much or just, whatever it was, there's times I look back, I'm like, you weren't the best you. And so I just realized the direction that I wanted to step, so I stepped away from that. And I had to step away from certain friends because that's what they were still interested in doing. So we let go of the past. You didn't know what you didn't know, right? There's a learning experience. We got to let go of worrying. So regrets is of the past, like sometimes depression. We let go of worrying because we need to trust in the right now and trust in our future. Trust in our future that we're building it. And when we keep focusing on that breath, it keeps happening. I went through hospice training through Memorial Hospital. And a lady she had her certificate of divinity. And I didn't know they actually had those. That was something new to me. But she had a certificate of divinity. And she'd been doing hospice and bereavement counseling and stuff for some time. And I asked her if she believed that people die when they want to. And she said yes. Because sometimes they'll be given a death sentence, right? And they'll say, oh, you have 2 weeks to live. Well, 2 months goes by, and people are like, thought we were talking 2 weeks here. But the person's not yet ready to die. They have an attachment. Sometimes it's a person that they wanted to see before they die. And she said once that person shows up, or once that realization of an attachment is recognized and let go of, they go. They go peacefully. They take their last breath. They turn their body back over to the earth. And yogis they've said, okay, I'm ready to leave. And they go into meditation and they don't come out. And so that shows us that our mind is so powerful. And if our mind can choose the time that we're going to die, it's also going to choose how we're living, how we're experiencing our life, the emotions that we're going to give, the emotions, the energy, motion that we put ourselves through. We're choosing where we send our energy. How many times has worry only happened in your mind? We think that something's going to happen. We're worried that something's going to happen. Oh my God, this is going to manifest. I don't want this. And then it never happens. And so all of that struggle, all of that heartache and energy that we expel on something that didn't even exist. So when we focus on those regrets and we focus on our past, we're suffering our memory. But when we focus on worrying and what ifs, we're suffering our imagination. And so if we're suffering the past and we're suffering the future, but the right now is capable of experiencing bliss and harmony and joy and peace and happiness in our right now moment, where do you want to be? And it's available to us always. That's the thing. Once we have that coming from within us, it can't be taken away. You recognize when somebody's trying to take it away, but when you love yourself to a point that you're like, I'm going to protect my peace by creating my environment and the space that's around me. It can't be taken away. When we recognize that somebody is trying to take it away, we recognize that, okay, well, they've got some things to deal with. And it's not about me, but I'm not going to enable them to disrupt my life when they're not working on theirs. So we have to let go of blame. Life is happening for you, not to you. We learn who to give our energy to, and we demonstrate strength on who to step away from. And that's a lot of these they're all tied in together. A lot of these go with the 8 limbs of yoga. We let go of guilt. Did you learn from your mistakes? If you did, you need to forgive yourself. You know, we forgive other people before we forgive ourselves sometimes. And you deserve it. You know, you're worth it. You're worth forgiveness. The forgiveness of ourselves, you're worth it. It gives you peace. You have to realize that there's just things that we don't know yet. And every opportunity is an opportunity for us to learn who we are and how we want to be. And if we see a pattern that we don't like, then we can consciously quit giving our energy to that pattern. It's all cause and effect. We let go of fear. I like to play with words a lot, and so a lot of short words, at least, they become acronyms for me. Fear is, for me, I call it face everything and rise, because there's so much that's on the other side of fear that we are to experience in our life. You know, when I moved to this valley, I started working for a plumbing contractor, and luckily for me, they were an absolutely horrible person to work for. They were very demanding, and I really didn't like that experience very much. But it promoted the strength within me to say, you know what, I'm making this dude a lot of money by me giving my time and my energy to him. Stop doing that. And so I went to Department of Labor and Industries and the courthouse and stuff, and I got my business licenses, and I started my own business. I didn't look at it as this horrible boss is imprisoning me and my time and not paying me as much as I want to earn. I'm looking at it as he was providing a platform for me to jump off from, helping me to recognize that I didn't like supporting him. And so I wanted to start supporting myself. And I started to trust in myself. And everybody around me is going, are you kidding me? You have debt. You have a house and a car payment, and you've never ran a business before. I'm like, no, but I've ran myself for quite some time, and it's worked out. So a business is just kind of an extension of that. And so I took out a home equity loan, and I quit. And people were like, you're nuts, because you had 401k, you had health coverage, you had basically a steady paycheck. All you had to do is show up, and they even gave you a vehicle to drive. But I bought a vehicle to drive. And I trusted in myself. And I stepped past that fear and those limitations that other people were trying to push on me. And I started stepping forward. And the first month I only made $800. And I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? I'm like, I was making that every week at least, And now in a whole month, I have to pay for the gas. And I only made $800. And this sucks. What did I do? Am I going to go ask for my job back? It's like, no, you still have a little bit of money saved up. Let's take care. Let's see what this is going to do. Then a couple days later, I got a phone call and saying, hey, there's a house down in Zilla that we need you to plumb. I'm like, okay, that's great. And so in a matter of days, I made more than I would have made in a month working for the contractor. And I started recognizing, I'm like, oh my gosh, I was selling myself cheaply for way too long. Because he was making the money to have a vacation home. He was doing this thing. And it was on the other side of fear that I found my freedom. I confronted it. I stepped past it. I trusted. And I put all my energy into it. And it worked. And 9 years later, I paid off my property. I was out of debt. I made some investments. I bought the things that I felt were going to be beneficial to help me with my future endeavors with this property, turning it into a permaculture homestead. And that was on the other side of fear. And I'm really glad that I stepped past it for me, because I've built a life that I really enjoy. The other thing is that fear can stand for is false evidence appearing real. Other people's fears that they're projecting onto you, and they didn't even maybe try it themselves. They just heard that somebody tried it one time and they failed, and that's something that's scary and you shouldn't do it because that's not where security is found. But sometimes security isn't growth. It's locking ourselves away in this little tomb that basically, we're putting ourselves in a closet. We're in a safe space. Nothing's going to bother us. But we're also lacking experience of growth and what we're capable of. And number 10 for the 10 to Zen is have a proper belly laugh at least once a day. Especially if it's about your inability to let go of any one of those other items. When we recognize it, we recognize that, somebody's better in this certain way than me. And we're recognizing number 1 about competing, or number 2 about competing, or number 1 about comparing. And we're like, okay, why am I comparing myself to them? Why am I not just comparing myself to yesterday's version of me? Is today's version of me better than yesterday's version of me? If that is, you're moving in the right direction. As long as we're taking steps in the direction of our growth, we're always growing. There's been times that, one time I had to walk from like 20th and Lincoln all the way out to the firing center. And I was like, that's like 8 miles. And I wasn't like prepared to walk, and so I wasn't wearing, comfortable shoes, and my jeans were a little bit longer than was good. It's evident they wore out on the back of them. But I just kept putting one foot in front of the other, and I got home. And if I would have just been sitting down and going, it's too far, it's too much, I would have never been. I'd still be sitting on 21st and Lincoln. Unless somebody says, hey, dude, you've been sitting here a long time. Where are you going to go? Somebody's going to eventually hand you a rope or something, So give me a break a little bit, But taking those steps helps us to move in the direction that we're going to find whatever's on the other side of what we want to achieve. So the top 5 things in my life that has promoted yoga, union with myself, is number 1, cause and effect. My mom was fantastic about teaching me cause and effect. I knew as a little kid that Basically, if I was an asshole, it might be painful or isolation. I mean, not like beat it, but a swat on my butt was a likely result of me not being a good little person, somebody that other people would like. She was consistent in that, and so I didn't have to question it. I mean, if I acted up, she was pretty consistent, and so I recognized this cause and effect, that I should try to be somebody that other people are at least going to like. You're gonna get along with me if we're hanging out for a little while. Sometimes I got some strong opinions or ideas on stuff that some people don't like, and that's okay. But recognizing that cause and effect has helped me all the way through my life, because just like nature. So, like, I have a dog, and she's had puppies. And when the puppy starts acting up, she doesn't beat the puppy. She doesn't attack the puppy. But she might nip it a little bit, or she gives it a little bark, and she says, "Hey, straighten up." And the puppy does, because it's realizing, oh, okay, I did something that wasn't acceptable. And so the puppy's learning those boundaries, because the mom or the mentors are teaching cause and effect. So that's why I feel that that was one of the things that helped me recognize cause and effect. Sometimes as a younger person, I would get emotionally in a direction, and it would get too much to be a point that I'd finally go, and just that would help calm me down. So then another big breath would calm me down a little bit more. And another breath, I'm realizing, why was I so stressed out? Why was I letting my emotions take me in that direction so far? Because I wasn't being conscious of my right now moment, and I wasn't using the tools that I was starting to recognize as something as a go-to, something that is like ingrained for me to constantly take from. And that tool of the breath is fantastic. And these aren't in any specific order, because I feel that they're all very important. But I've always been interested in detail-oriented hobbies. One of my first real hobbies was archery. And archery, it takes a lot of focus to be able to hit your target. There's alignments for your body. There's alignments for your sights, or you're sighting down the arrow. There's ideas that you've got to bring in about trajectory and your wind, and the speed of your arrow, and maybe obstacles that are between you and the target. And so it helps to bring you to that right now moment. Another one of my hobbies is riding motorcycles. And motorcycles is a great meditation, because you better be focusing on right now, because somebody's going to pull out in front of you. They're looking for cars. They don't recognize motorcycles on the road. So, like when I'm riding my motorcycle, I'm riding it as if I'm invisible to everybody, because a lot of people don't pay attention. And when you're invisible to everybody, you've got to pay attention in all directions. You've got people coming up behind you. You've got people maybe coming over into your lane. And you're only on two wheels, so you're not nearly as stable as a car in certain ways. And you're not just putting it into drive and going. You're engaging your hands with the clutch, and your foot with the shifter, and your other foot with the brake, and your right hand with the throttle and a front brake. And there's so much going on that you're really, really aware of right now. Helps us to bring in that focus. And if you're not aware of that right now, it can become painful or deadly. People not paying attention to a hazard in the road when you're only on two wheels, you can end up on the ground really, really easily. Martial arts is another hobby that you're focused on all different aspects of your experience. And yoga is a martial art. Martial being the body, and art being a conscious representation or an expression of your body and how you are being in your environment. Mentors. Everyone has something to teach, and everyone has lots to learn. I was talking about in my 30s, I was successful doing that, and I kind of thought I knew a lot. I was paying my bills. I was doing everything that everybody else seemed to find as a successful thing. Consistently achieving goals that you set for yourself. That's what I call success. But I didn't. If your cup's ever full, you're not going to be able to accept the knowledge that's available from other people. You're not going to be able to accept the lessons so readily because your cup's already full. It's flowing over. I know so much. I have nothing to learn. But then when we start to realize how little we actually know of what there is to know, it kind of brings us into that childlike state again, to where we're exploring. Last summer, 2 summers ago, I was exploring on my property, and there was a log there, and the bark on it was loose. And so I pulled back the bark, and it revealed an ant colony. And I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I just destroyed their home. But none of them worried about it. They self-organized. They started carrying all the little eggs, and they just started carrying them to a new place. They accepted. They're like, oh, hey, our world just came apart. But there wasn't any struggle. Everybody just came together. They did what they needed to do. They moved the eggs. And all of their colony was moved in 8 minutes. It was fantastic to watch. And just watching nature self-organize helps us to recognize that our capacity as humans to self-organize and locally create the things that we need to do in our experience are totally possible. And it happens efficiently. In 8 minutes, they moved their house. And all their babies. It was really a neat experience. Some of my mentors have been in the way of YouTube University. This is one of the things we're going to be sharing on YouTube. This is going to go on my page, and if you guys have benefited from it, feel free to share it with your friends. Or if somebody somewhere else needs to hear certain things about yoga that I've learned, then it's something that we can share. And it's the way I've learned, because people have been willing to share what they've learned in a way that we can all have access to it. We're in the information age. I call it the apocalypse. I think we're in the apocalypse. It's the unveiling of information. And with this unveiling of information that the internet allows, it allows us to become aware of all these options that are available to us that maybe we haven't recognized in the past. Because, like when I was a kid, to advertise on television, it was cost prohibitive. There's no way that I could have put this kind of message to, this has the means of being shared globally. Right? A couple of clicks by each person, and it's everywhere. But in the past, it was only those people with a lot of money that could push their ideas. Now, that camera only cost me about $100, and the internet cost me like $50 a month, and it's a connection to the world. And so, it helps us to seek mentors, and if you don't like a person's message, it's easy. Just hit the little X on the corner of the screen, and they're gone. And you don't ever have to hear them again. But if you like them, you can go to their page, and you can subscribe, or you can listen to more of what they have to say. Because if they have one good thing to say, they might have more things to say too as well. Awareness. Awareness of the breath. That's like when I started recognizing how the breath was helping me achieve a calmness. It was just recognizing the how and the why that it works, to know that how I can bring it into my day-to-day life. Whereas before it would be once I'm in it, I've got my gear in whatever emotion, and the throttle's mashed down, and I'm going in this direction. But by breathing, we're like pushing in the clutch. We're able to go back to that neutral position. We're not directing ourselves in one way. Then the fifth thing was just like an internal desire to be the best me that I know how to be. And it's through reflection of what I have been, what I'm doing right now, and what I want to build, what I want to build into my future. And when we are paying attention to that, we're always stepping into that next best version of who we are. So I would now like to open it up to any questions. If anybody has questions about yoga, and I will do my best to answer it. And if I don't have an answer, then then I guess that's something that we can all search, right? Because anybody have anything? Yes.
I have two. The first is if you look at the 8 limbs of yoga and the system of yoga, and you removed asana and you replaced it with fishing or dancing or knitting or rock climbing, would you change? How imperative is the practice of asana to the system of yoga, or could it be any bodily movement that kind of keeps you in that flow?
Great question. I think that the process of doing something intentionally with fishing, trying to be the best fisher person that you know how to be, using the right gear, you've put your time and energy into learning the techniques, and it takes certain skills. There's certain hand-eye coordinations that are necessary to do the task. The asanas, I think, are one of the best ways to do that, though, because it also helps to promote our growth. When we are seeking stimulus outside of ourselves, we're going to experience less of an experience than when we take that within and using our body. So, for a moment, just if everybody could just push out, just put your hands out to your side. And then we breathe in, breathing out, push it a little bit farther. So we're recognizing some growth there. Pushing a little bit farther. And we keep on growing. And when we incorporate all of these different motions in our body, go ahead and bring your arms in. But you kind of felt, though, that when we're out like this, we're just holding our hands out, that when we start to push, we're feeling our arms, our elbows, we're extending in all different aspects of our body. And when we incorporate, like say if we're standing up during that, we take and we push out against the traction we have available with our feet on our mat. And so we're engaging our legs now at this point in time too. And so we're creating, with fishing, sometimes you might be standing in the river and you're working on balance because the energy flowing past you is an obstruction. It's something to focus on. With the asanas, we're creating our own resistance. And we're creating it in a way that we feel is best for our bodies. If there's something that, a shoulder injury, you wouldn't want to push too far into a shoulder workout. But using all the different asanas, we're able to explore these different opportunities of growth. Does that answer?
Yeah, my interpretation from that is there's just a greater diversity of movement within.
Yeah, diversity of movement, opportunity of growth.
Let someone else go. I do have another question, but I don't want to take up all the questions.
Anybody else?
I want to ask, what was your deciding factor of going from a mentality of scarcity to a mentality of prosperity?
Just recognizing that abundance is everywhere when we consciously shape our experience. Scarcity is when food is only available in the stores, it costs money, and if it stopped being supplied through a middleman, it can promote scarcity. when we are shaping our environment to where we're able to grab it from the source, there's abundance. It's like I have some rhubarb plants, and I use some rhubarb in smoothies and stuff, but it produced about 30 pounds of rhubarb, and so I had abundance that I was able to share with others, and that's because I went from the source rather than the stores. And so I think when we avoid these middlemen, like my old boss, he was a middleman. He told me where to go, and and then he collected money and he gave me a part of it. And so there wasn't as much abundance for me with my energy as when I started doing things more naturally, and I started just going direct energy exchanges. So if I come to your house and you're saying, hey, I need this fixed, right? And I say, okay, hey, I can fix that. And we agree on an exchange of energy, labor rate and parts versus, the desire or the need of a service, right? We're handling that most efficiently. Because if me and him are just working together, and he says, this has been kind of a short week for me. Money's a little bit tight. I'm like, you know what? I have the ability right there, because I own me and my actions and the fruit of my labor, to say, let's cut that. Let's cut my service time in half. I'd be okay with that, and we're still all right. We'll accomplish what we need to do, and it gives that freedom. And so he's found abundance because now he's achieved a service that he wanted, and I've found that abundance because whoever I was working for isn't going to take a portion of that. So it's what I've created, I've been able to benefit from. And through a voluntary participation, we're everybody involved is benefiting. And abundance is just something that happens when we focus on the most efficient and transparent ways of being. I found abundance in my life just by trusting, and I've had to focus. I've removed certain things from my life that were liabilities, and I focused on my assets. And so in everything in life is either an asset or a liability. And so when we start to recognize assets versus liabilities, we start giving our energy to the assets, and they multiply because that's what we're giving our energy to. So that's like Yama, one of the 8 limbs of yoga. It's the attitude toward our environment, and what we think about, we bring about. And so if we look at our environment as an abundant resource, it should be respected, because if we're only in a way of consumption, we're going to deplete things. But I think that we are here as co-creators. We are here to work together to create an environment that we all find favorable and abundance for everybody. We find peace in that, because there's no sense in people beating each other up for the last loaf of bread on the shelf when we can just go out and grab food as it grows from the ground. And it promotes a real peace about everything. That's with our Nayama, the attitude toward ourself. We're recognizing that we are an abundance of energy, that when we use it consciously, we're doing it in ways that we find favorable. Yes.
Do you think that someone can experience the system of yoga through asana, through the practice of asana, with complete ignorance about breath, or knowing that breath is part of the system, or knowing that meditation is part of the system, so they just started doing the shapes? Do you think they can find that path without an external influence teaching them, well, these other parts are there as
right.
well? Do you know what I'm
yes,
saying?
Yes,
At some point someone discovered that through the sitting.
Yeah. I think if as long as a person was focused on growth, so if a series of asanas was the only thing available for a person to learn from, by pushing themselves into, it's like a mind-body balance. And when we achieve a balance in the body, our mind is also going to seek that balance. And when we're displaying poses and we're balancing our body, because we're always mirroring poses. And so we're working on left hemisphere and right hemispheres of the brain. We're working to create a balance that our system of education is primarily focused left brain. We're not too focused on the artistic side, the feminine side of the energy of our bodies. It's been mostly focused on the masculine. It's been focused on order, focused on strict adherence to these ideas. And it's not working for everybody. We find that balance and finding it in the body. I think that they would achieve the realization of the breath when they recognize it's going to come to you, because you can only hold a pose for so long if you're not breathing. And your muscles are just going to fatigue because it's not delivering the energy. We're not delivering that oxygenated blood to our system and fueling this biological supercomputer. And so by doing that, we are creating a balance. We're creating a growth. We're busting past those boundaries that we've held before. And whenever we start pushing past perceived boundaries, we grow. And I think we take that into our mind. We start to recognize if my body is growing so much, my intellect, my spiritual maturity, my emotional maturity, all of these things are growing too. And it just creates that awareness. And whenever we can create awareness in mind or body, it's going to be experienced in the other.
Thank you.
Pratyahara. We've talked about pranayama. We've talked about the asanas. The pratyahara is the withdrawal of senses. That's one of the things the asanas teach us, is when we're into a pose, it's difficult. And so sometimes there's discomfort, or even depending on the pose, there might be pain associated to it. And it's because we're stressing those boundaries of what we're capable of at this moment. And by pushing into that pain, not to the point of injury, but to the point of stretching those boundaries, we grow. I'm more flexible than I was 10 years ago because I stretch more often. And I do it to a point that it is difficult, it is painful. And you shift to the breath so that way you can do it. Okay, one more breath. All right, one more breath. And then you just keep focusing on that breath, and you're able to stay in a posture a lot longer than if you don't focus on the breath. So,
don't teach this in your classes, guys. In the gentle classes.
Right.
Rob and I have had these talks before.
So the dhyana is actually samadhi. That's the highest state of mental concentration, still bound to the body, uniting with our highest reality. And when we're in that state, information just flows. You can ask questions, and your higher intellect is available. It's like you're in connect with your higher self. And it's amazing what we can learn about ourselves when we just focus and we listen. And we have a connection that when we're quiet and we're not trying to project, we become receptive. That's like, prayer is talking to God, the Creator, the universe. Meditation is listening. Meditation is that quiet that we can have an idea of a question or a pathway or contemplation in our mind, in our experience, and we can listen, and we can usually find a really favorable path without even seeking outside of ourselves. We can recognize the cause and effects of our past. We can shape our future by right now thinking and acting in the way we most find favorable. Is there...
Probably wrap it up so people can get out. We should probably wrap it up.
Okay, great.
Get out, yep.
One of the things that I like to conclude each practice with, and we haven't been in a real meditative state for a while, but normally, like after we are in a meditative state, or we're getting ready to go back into our environment, I like to reground. And a great way to do that I have found is, we'll just go ahead and focus our breath again, shifting our breath, breathing in through our nose, pulling our shoulders back, letting go. One more, breathing in, letting go. Breathing in, letting go. This time, breathing our hands up, pushing our hands to the outside of the room, palms up, hands up, just as far as you can. Breathing out, hands down, palms down, all the way to the ground. Breathing in, palms up, hands up. Letting go, all the way to the ground, pushing out. One more time, breathing in, hands up, palm to palm, coming into Namaste hands. Exhaling into heart center, drawing breath down. In all shared practices of yoga, we bow our heads to each other in completion of our practice and say Namaste.
Namaste.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.